spore in the cartographer's lung. I stood at the edge of our family home, a place marred by memories I wished to forget. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a sinister orange hue over the aging structure, its once vibrant paint peeling away like the shreds of my dignity. I hadn't been back in years, not since the day they chose laughter over understanding, condemning my life's work to the realm of delusions. "Look at him, the spore freak," my brother had said, smirking as my mother's laughter echoed through the kitchen, sharp and cutting. "He'll lose his mind over those stupid maps. One of these days he'll drag us all down with him." That day they laughed. They laughed as I stood before them, a pariah in the flesh, desperate to explain the ominous patterns I had uncovered in my research on airborne fungal spores. They couldn't see the truth I had glimpsed, didn't want to see it. They were blind to the shadows creeping into our world, shadows I had vowed to expose, no matter the cost. Years later, I returned not as the pathetic cartographer they had mocked, but as a reluctant expert in paranormal epidemiology, a name now whispered in fear in the darkest corners of the internet. I had unearthed horrors tied to those spores' curses that twisted the very fabric of existence. The maps I had drawn were not just the scribbles of a madman. They were warnings, cryptic guides to places where humanity dared not tread. As I stepped inside, the air felt thick and oppressive, a warning echoing off the walls. My family was gathered in the living room, their expressions a blend of surprise and something else. Fear? Regret? My mother's eyes widened, old wrinkles deepening like the cracks in our history. The laughter had faded, replaced by an anxious silence. "Is that really you?" she whispered, eyes darting to the worn satchel slung over my shoulder, the contents hidden but potent. "Mother," I began, but the words stuck in my throat. I could see the disbelief festering in my father's eyes, the way he clutched a worn recliner as if it were a lifeline. "I came to warn you." But they didn't want a warning. They wanted the son they had ridiculed, not the bearer of dark truths. They wanted to dismiss me, just as they had all those years ago. I felt a familiar sting in my chest, a betrayal I had long since learned to swallow. But the truth must be spoken. "You think you know what madness is? You think I've lost my mind?" I glanced at my brother, his bravado faltering. "What I've seen, what I've survived, is beyond anything you could comprehend." The room grew colder, shadows deepening, and I hesitated. Perhaps this was not the time to reveal everything. But the weight of the spores, the knowledge I carried, bore down on me, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Do you remember the village?" I asked, my voice steady but heavy with the burden of truth. They all stiffened, the memory of my previous failure hanging like a specter in the air. The landslide, the devastation, the villagers who perished. Their eyes flickered with something akin to guilt, but I couldn't stop now. That wasn't an accident. I was sabotaged. They didn't want anyone, least of all me, discovering the patterns of the spores, the fungi that thrive on despair and decay. I pulled out my satchel, heart racing, and produced a map, a detailed grid of our neighborhood, its contours marked by the trails of spores drifting through the air, revealing the malignant currents that twisted through life. "You see this? This is where the spores converge. This is where the darkness seeps in." But they didn't see. Not yet. Their skepticism was a fortress I had to breach. I gestured toward the window where the gathering storm darkened the sky. "You have to listen. The spores are awakening, and they are not merely airborne. They have a will of their own." And as if summoned by my words, the first drop of rain fell, a thick, viscous substance, like ink staining the ground. My family gasped, recoiling as the rain began to fall more heavily, each drop bringing with it a putrid stench. Beneath the surface, the spores were waking, crawling from their dormant state, seeking hosts. I stood transfixed as the air thickened with an unseen presence, a darkness swelling just beyond the threshold. You mocked me, but I am not mad, and you are not safe. A shadow crept into the room, pulsating with a grotesque energy. It twisted and coiled, the very essence of the spores I had spent years mapping. The horror of it was palpable. A living manifestation of disbelief and scorn. Look at it. I shouted, grasping for their eyes, their attention. This is what you denied, what you laughed at. This is your reckoning. Their faces turned pale, the weight of their past ridicule crashing down on them like thunder. The shadow stretched, reaching for them, and panic erupted in the room. My mother clutched her chest, my brother stumbled back, and my father shouted for them to run. But I stood firm. I had faced this terror before. I had crawled through hell to find the truth. I had survived the spore. In their laughter, they had invited their doom, the very essence of what I had fought against. I stepped back outside, the air sweet with the scent of rain, but tinged with the knowledge of what lay in wait. My shadow lengthened as I walked away from the home that had once been my prison, leaving behind a family haunted by their own doubts. I was no longer a pariah, nor a disgrace. I was a witness, a cartographer of shadows.